there, how's it going, you guys? Welcome to today's video. I will be discussing the Triumph Trident 660. This has been my daily driver for about 6 months now. I finally feel like I'm past that honeymoon phase and I can give it an adequate review. I have several thousand miles on this bike. I ride it every single day. I'm just a regular guy. And in this video, I'm gonna list the pros, the cons, and let you know my honest opinion, what I think about this bike. So let's get right into the video. Okay, so here's what to expect in today's video. We're going to talk about how this bike actually feels and how it handles when you're riding it. And then we'll list all the specs and the technologies and the options that are available on this motorcycle and talk about whether that's appropriate for a beginner, intermediate, or an advanced rider. We will go over all the recommended maintenance and talk about whether you can do that at the dealership or some of that at home. We will also talk about my experiences with the dealership, purchasing this motorcycle and what to expect in that process, as well as how much I paid out the door for this motorcycle. And as you guys can see, my bike is not exactly stock anymore, so we will talk a little bit about aftermarket products. If you're into modding your bike or customizing things like I am, you'll probably want to know what aftermarket products are out there, what's available to you, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then lastly, I will get all nitpicky and talk about the things that I don't like about this bike, because like we mentioned earlier, no motorcycle is perfect and neither is this one, so I will talk about the things that I dislike at the end of the video as well. So at this point, Triumph has become notoriously famous for their triple engines. They produce inline 3-cylinder engines that has a classic British charm that has become highly sought after. And the Trident 660 engine produces a welcoming, sporty 81 horsepower at 10,500 RPMs and a 47 foot-pounds of torque. That means that this engine has plenty of low-end torque, excellent mid-range, and a super zesty top end that's just begging for you to rev it all the way to redline. The 660 engine is slightly different from its brother, the Street Triple. Mostly notable is the shortened stroke length from the displacement. The 74mm bore remains the same, but there's 67 new internal components, including a redesigned crank, new pistons, new cams, and an updated gearbox ratio. It features a 6-speed gearbox and slightly taller 5th and 6th cogs for highway cruising. Shifting feels good, it's precise, and there's an optional quick shifter that you can buy from the factory. The Trident is rocking a beefy Showa suspension system, 41mm upside down non-adjustable fork in the front, and Showa monoshock with preload adjustment in the rear. This makes for a really great urban riding environment, as well as great handling in the mountains and the corners. The Trident is full of modern electronics and rider aids. Noteworthy mentions are the two distinct riding modes. There's a road and a rain mode that radically alter the throttle response. Throttle response in road mode is crisp and athletic, while rain mode turns things down considerably for damp conditions. For braking power, we have Nissan's 2-piston calipers and a 310mm floating rotors used in the front, with a single Nissan piston caliper and a 255mm rotor in the back. The way the front brakes are set up on this bike, you get a soft initial bite, which makes learning to progressively brake much easier. The tank size is a 3.7 gallon gas tank with just over 50 miles per gallon on the fuel mileage. And did I mention, this bike is considerably light. It's only 417 pounds wet. So right off the bat, I want to get the subjective praises out of the way. I've been a fan of Triumph for years. Obviously, I love how these bikes look, but also the sound they make is just amazing. And the Trident is no exception to that. They just have that engine howl. It's that triple on the engine. It just sounds so good, especially when downshifting or engine braking. It just has a whistle, almost like a turbocharger on a car. I really don't know how to explain it unless you've heard it, but this is so good. Like I said, it's not the same unless you hear it in person. And it really makes me warm and tingly on the inside every time I hear it. Now, of course, that's all subjective, but I just had to get it out of the way. I had to get it off my chest. I really love it. I'm not gonna lie, that's one of the main reasons I went with Triumph. So let's go ahead and talk about how it actually feels to ride this thing. Sitting on it as a 5'10" person, it is extremely comfortable. I can just reach out for the handlebars, pretty much flat foot this thing, and when I'm riding around, it is super comfortable. I can really duck down into it, or I can just kind of relax when I'm cruising around town. But the ergonomics on it is perfect for someone my height. I ride this thing 95% of the time around town, through the city, and it is the perfect weapon of choice for cruising around town. I'm able to split lanes, no problem. I get up to the stoplight. I take off past the cars with no issue at all, accelerating past them and getting out of trouble. It is really nimble. I can maneuver around traffic, in and out of cars, and still be aware of my surroundings, that I don't have to think about this heavy bike or maneuvering something that's very difficult. It just is easy to ride and easy to maneuver, and it's just a badass way to travel from point A to point B, if you ask me. The other 5% of my riding is done in the canyons. I will drive this thing up to Big Bear and I cruise around in the canyons, carving it up, no problem. This thing is so lightweight, you can just flick it through the corners. I feel really confident on this thing, and I can dip through the mountains, no problem. So that being said, is this bike a good bike for beginners or advanced riders? Now, full disclosure, this is actually my first bike. I took my safety course back in March. I've been riding it every day since then. I think if you're a mature rider and you acknowledge that this thing is a beast, then you can be smart about it. You can use some of the technologies that are there, and you can practice with it in a safe way. Now, it does have some technologies built into it that helps a beginner rider. Now, you should never rely 100% on these technologies, but it's nice to have as a safety net. There's ABS, so your brakes don't lock up. There's traction control. And there's two modes. There's a road mode and a rain mode. So the first 300 miles for me on this bike, I rode it in rain mode with traction control and ABS, and I never felt out of control. The rain mode slightly delays the throttle response, and it kind of mutes the throttle. So in that mode, you won't whiskey throttle it. It won't get out of control and skyrocket yourself to the moon. So it kind of delays the throttle response. It tones everything down in the mapping, and it makes it just a little bit easier to get used to this bike while you're shifting it, while you're feeling the weight, where to position it, and you kind of learn the bike. So that's what I would suggest for new riders. Learn it in rain mode. After maybe about 300 miles, then start practicing your throttle control in road mode, and keep traction control on, ABS with this thing, and you should be good. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, if you are an advanced rider, you could put this thing in road mode, disable the traction control, and you'll wheelie to your heart's content. This thing really is fun. 660cc bike. This triple will get up and go. Like I said, through the mountains, I think this bike pretty much keeps up with anybody in the corners and the turns. And that's really one of the main selling points for me for this bike as a beginner. I didn't want to get a brand new bike, ride it for a year, and then have to upgrade it. So this is a big boy bike. This is something that you can grow into. I want to keep this bike for a long, long time. I want to continue to ride it. And that was one of the main reasons why I chose this bike in particular. So let's go ahead and talk about maintenance intervals. The first interval that you need to get an oil and filter change is at 600 miles. And Triumph recommends doing this at the dealership. I would follow the book on this one, you guys, just to make sure that you don't void your warranty. After that, it's up to you. They recommend by the book every 10,000 miles or every year from the previous oil change, whichever comes first. I'm probably not gonna ride this thing for 10,000 miles in a year, so mine's gonna be annually. So basically once a year, I'll do my oil change. My local dealership here in Brea, California charged me $300, so no issue there. Might seem expensive for you for an oil change, but like I said, you don't wanna void that warranty. As for other maintenance, as far as lubing and cleaning your chain, you will need to buy some rear Swingarm spools and a rear Paddock Stand so that you can get this bike up off the back wheel and clean and lube that chain. But I will list a video to that if you guys are interested in those products or how to do it. It's very simple, but that's some maintenance that you can do at home that shouldn't be very difficult. And that's really part of the process of being a motorcycle owner. All right, so let's talk about aftermarket availability. This bike has been out for over a year now, so there are companies making modifications for this motorcycle. As you can see, I've done some bar end mirrors, I've changed out the seat, I did some frame sliders, some wheel sliders, and a full exhaust system. So there's a lot of modifications out there for it already. I would say avoid places like AliExpress or something like that that's coming from China. Get premium quality parts for this motorcycle. You guys, this is a premium bike, so why would you put something cheap on it, right? The premium parts that are made for this bike are coming from the UK or Italy. So that is one downside for modifying this bike in the States, is that it's harder to get the parts, they're harder to find, and it sometimes takes several months to get. And cons, let's talk about some of the things that I dislike about this bike. Now, there is absolutely no storage on here. There is nowhere to put anything. You can take this, remove the seat, and there is no space underneath there. There is no compartments anywhere. So if you do need to carry anything, or you plan on doing any type of touring, or just need some space to carry stuff, you're gonna have to get some aftermarket bags or cases for this thing. For me, I just use a backpack. I'm commuting to work. I keep my work things in that bag, and that's sufficient. Another con about this bike being a naked bike, it has no fairings or windscreen in the front. That means that you feel all the wind when you're on the freeway. It's not that bad if it's a calm day and you're just feeling all that air. It pushes right here on your chest. Sometimes I'll just lean on the tank, and that's good enough. But what I mean is, if it's a windy day, you really feel it. The bike is lightweight also. So with no fairings, the lightweight of it, if I get a side gust on the freeway, I really feel it, and it kind of sketches me out every once in a while. I get those Santa Ana winds down here in Southern California, and if it's a windy day, I'm probably not going to be out riding on the freeway because of that. This thing just kind of pushes me side to side, and I'm sketched out when there's a big diesel truck right next to me. If you're going to do any type of over an hour on the freeway, I would recommend getting a windscreen. For me, again, aesthetically, I like how it looks without it, and I'm not really doing a lot of freeway riding. If I do, it's less than an hour long. I'm just riding it around town, so that's why I haven't put one on myself. And my last con is actually this rear set right here. On all the trims, every single color, it comes in chrome. For some reason, I just feel like it's like a plasticky type of rear set. I'm sure it's not cheaply made, but it just feels cheaply made, and it's chrome. So for whatever reason, that bothers me, and it doesn't look like it matches in all the colors. So I powder coated mine black, and that is one con. I guess it's an aesthetic thing for me personally. But it hasn't broke, it hasn't cracked. I'm not saying it's a cheap part, it just feels like one of the cheaper parts on the entire bike. I don't know why they made that one chrome. Okay, let's talk about my experience at the dealership. So it used to be nobody pays sticker price for anything anymore, to now everyone pays sticker price or more. We have a low supply of these bikes here in the States, and they are in a high demand. And these bikes are coming from the UK, so there's that import fee, there's the stocking fees. I ended up paying over MSRP by $1,000. It's listed as $8,500 for the Diablo red color that I got, and I ended up paying $9,800 or so with taxes and fees just out the door. So basically $10,000, just to let you guys know what to expect here in the States. But overall, you know what? I think it's worth it. Like I said, I ride in Southern California on in the biggest cities in the country, and I have not seen another Trident out there. I've seen a ton of other bikes, but I have not seen this bike. So it is pretty unique. It is pretty rare. That was also one of the appeals for me, is that I don't see many of them out there, and it is a badass bike. It really is a head turner. People are always asking me questions about it, what type of bike it is. I think for the middleweight naked bike, this thing is truly a clear winner. With the technologies that it has, with the riding modes, with the size engine, there really is nothing that competes with it, in my opinion, other than the MT-07, which I think this one just looks way cooler. I love the technologies on it. I love the rider modes. I love the TFT LCD heads-up display. I love the LED headlights. You know, it just has that neo-retro, old school meets new school bike. It's like a Sportster. You know, it has its own new type of class, and it's just super cool. It's very appealing to me. Well guys, I just had a beautiful ride up to Big Bear, California, and I think I'll end the video there. Please hit the thumbs up button if you found this video useful. Consider subscribing, especially if you want to see more Trident content like this. And comment below with any questions that you have. I'm pretty good at responding to every single one of them. And I'll end it like I always do. I'll remind you to get outside, stay hydrated, and keep on moving.